What if I told you that what Lewis Hamilton did in the second week of testing in Bahrain not only surprised the paddock, but also forced Ferrari to reveal something it had been hiding for months? Because we are not talking about a simple best time in an irrelevant preseason table. We are talking about a Ferrari that accelerated harder than Red Bull, that maintained the pace in long runs without critical degradation, and that, according to internal data, could have an energy advantage that completely changes the balance of power by 2026. The question is simple. Are we at the beginning of a new red era with Hamilton at the helm, or is Ferrari playing a master game before the season really begins? The second week of testing in Bahrain was not a simple continuation of preseason work. It was the moment when Ferrari stopped hiding. During the first days of testing, the Scuderia had worked quietly, racking up miles, testing setups, and avoiding headlines. But in this second stint in Sakir, the focus changed. It was no longer just data correlation. It was real performance. Lewis Hamilton began setting times that immediately set off alarm bells. These were not just isolated fast laps. What was surprising was the context in which those turns appeared. He lapped in the high 134 and low 135 range in performance simulations, steadily getting into the front group. But what really struck was how those times didn't seem to depend on artificial conditions like minimum fuel loads or extreme engine maps. The analyses that circulated in the paddock pointed to something even more striking. The Ferrari showed a particularly aggressive 0 to 200 km/h acceleration. On a circuit like Bahrain, where traction in slow corners and clean exit onto long straights is decisive, this is not a minor detail. It suggests extremely well-optimized power delivery and efficient energy management. This is where Ferrari begins to reveal its strongest card. The new Engineers assembly is not only reliable, something that they already demonstrated by accumulating more than 400 combined laps between Hamilton and Leclerc, but it also seems to be working with a very refined energy mapping. There is talk of a deployment without clipping on the main straight and of electrical management capable of sustaining thrust in critical areas of the circuit. But it wasn't just top speed. In Bahrain's Sector 2, the most technical, the SF26 was particularly strong. Even with a significant fuel load, the car maintained stability when changing direction and good traction when exiting. This indicates that the aerodynamic and mechanical balance is more achieved than many expected in such an early phase of the 2026 project. Another key point was degradation. In previous seasons, Ferrari could impress on one lap, but suffered on long runs. This time, in extended simulations, the pace did not drop dramatically. The long runs showed consistency, and that completely changes the reading of times. Because it's one thing to be fast for 3 laps. It is quite another to maintain that rhythm for 15 or 20 turns. Ferrari came out of this second week with something more valuable than the best time of the day. It came out with technical credibility. Mileage was high, reliability was solid, and simulations were varied. It was not a CUDA effect. It was a structured program where Hamilton tested qualifying setups, long runs and correlation work without the car showing any obvious weaknesses. And here the Hamilton factor comes in. The adaptation was more natural than many anticipated. A lost pilot was not seen looking for references. A champion was seen adjusting the car to his style. Confidence grew lap after lap. And when Hamilton finds that early connection with the car, the competitive ceiling is raised. Ferrari did not emerge as the favorite. But he hinted that the 2026 project is not a long-term bet. It is an immediate threat. Because it's one thing to set competitive times and tests. It's quite another to force the rest of the paddock to rethink their reading of the competitive order before the season even begins. And that is exactly what happened after the second week in Bahrain. The first thing that began to circulate were not headlines. They were internal questions in other teams. Why could Ferrari maintain the pace in long runs without an abrupt drop? Why did its acceleration seem so clean coming out of slow corners? And why didn't they show visible signs of energy clipping at the end of the straight? This is where the narrative changes from fast times to structural advantage. Ferrari accumulated approximately 1,100 power unit laps between the official team and customers in Bahrain. That is equivalent to about 6,000 kilometers without relevant failures. In a new era where the hybrid component has even greater weight, this early reliability is not a secondary detail. It is a basis for aggressive development. When a team is confident in its power unit, it can explore more demanding maps. You can experiment with more ambitious energy deployments. You can work in wider performance windows without fear of compromising durability. And that's what started to creep in the paddock. Ferrari wasn't just fast, he seemed comfortable being fast. There was even talk of a possible advantage of up to 15% in usable energy of the ERSK compared to other units at this point in development. If that figure is even partially true, we are facing a paradigm shift. Because we're not just talking about raw power. We talk about efficiency. We talked about how long you can sustain that power in real race conditions. In Bahrain, the SF26 did not seem to run out on the main straight. There was no visual sensation that the car stayed at the end of the long stretch. Delivery was constant. This generates two enormous strategic advantages: defense in DRS and attack capacity without compromising the battery. But there is something even more disturbing for rivals. Ferrari didn't seem to be pushing the car to the limit. We did not see violent corrections. We didn't see constant oversteer. We didn't see a nervous car. In the technical sector, the car was stable. In traction, it was solid. And under braking, Hamilton began to gain confidence quickly. That indicates balance. And when you have mechanical and aerodynamic balance along with energy efficiency, the package is no longer circumstantial. Now, Ferrari internally did not sell euphoria. The message was much more nuanced. They recognize that tests are controlled scenarios, who do not know the real fuel loads of others. That each computer runs different programs. But there is a key difference. The correlation between simulation and track was positive. In previous years, Ferrari suffered when the wind tunnel data did not match what they saw on the track. This time, the reading was coherent, and that allows us to develop with clear direction. No structural doubts. Meanwhile, Hamilton experienced something he hadn't experienced in a long time: a fluid adaptation. He didn't need to reinvent his style. He didn't seem uncomfortable. On the contrary, he began to mold the car to his way of driving. That's critical because a driver who feels front axle and rear wheel drive naturally can start pushing limits sooner than his rivals. And this is where the word madness makes sense. Not because Ferrari won anything in Bahrain. Not because the tests defined championships. But because for the first time in a long time, Ferrari showed three pillars at the same time: speed, consistency, and reliability. And when those three elements coincide, the message is clear that we are not looking at a Ferrari that needs 6 months to understand its car. We are facing a Ferrari that already understands what it has at hand. Ferrari wasn't just fast. Ferrari showed a technical base that does not depend on specific conditions. And that completely changes the reading of the preseason. 4 years, the Italian team has had peaks in performance that did not translate into consistency. In this second week in Sakir, the message was different. The car did not appear to be running in a narrow window. It didn't seem delicate. It didn't seem fragile. That implies something very serious: room for development. When a car is born balanced, with good traction, solid energy efficiency, and controlled degradation, the team is not working to correct structural defects. It is working to optimize. And that difference is enormous, because correcting takes time. Optimize multiplies performance. Furthermore, the mileage accumulated without serious failures allows something that many underestimate: internal confidence. Engineers can risk more in configuration, can explore more aggressive aerodynamic limits, and can push energy mapping without constant fear of compromising reliability. And if you add to that equation Lewis Hamilton quickly finding connection with the car, the scenario becomes even more interesting. A driver in the adaptation phase usually limits himself to understanding the behavior of the car. In Bahrain, Hamilton didn't seem to be just learning. He seemed to already be adjusting the car to his liking. This indicates that the SF26 base is predictable, communicative, and adaptable. Now, the trickiest point is this: Ferrari didn't show everything. The tests are not a complete showcase. No team reveals definitive configurations or extreme maps. If with mixed programs, variable fuel, and correlation tests the car already showed that level, the question is how much additional margin there is when the race weekend demands the maximum. And that is where the word madness stops being media hype and becomes a technical warning. Because if the ERSK's energy efficiency is as strong as the data suggests, if 0 to 200 km/h acceleration is truly superior, and if degradation is controlled, then Ferrari is not dependent on specific track circumstances. It can be competitive in different scenarios. What they revealed in Bahrain was not a one-time hit. It was a structure that combines optimized power delivery, efficient energy management, stable aerodynamic balance, consistent rhythm in long runs, and a pilot who is beginning to feel comfortable. That does not guarantee championships, but it does redefine the starting point. Ferrari did not go out looking for headlines. I didn't need to do it. What he showed on the court spoke for itself. A car that accelerates forcefully, A hybrid system that seems more efficient than its rivals at this point in development. A controlled degradation. And, above all, a technical base that transmits stability. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.